Hello, and welcome to Monday Mug Mentions Week 6, where over the course of a cup of coffee, I talk about some things that interest me in the tabletop game industry and in the gaming industry in general. So welcome, and thank you for joining me this afternoon. Sorry for my beard being awry. This afternoon, we are enjoying a cup of Laughing Man coffee. This is called Ducales or Ducales Blend. It's Hugh Jackman's coffee company. Of all things, it's Hugh Jackman's coffee company, which I find to be interesting. Last week we did Joey Kramer from Aerosmith's coffee, and this week we have Hugh Jackman, the famous actor's coffee. So I guess superstars are getting into the coffee business. That's what I'm learning through doing all of this. So, hello, good afternoon, Ian, Stephanie. Thank you for joining. Thank you for joining me for a cup of coffee. So this is an interesting coffee. It's like a chocolate and fruity sort of taste to it. It's pretty rich, but not nearly as strong as most of what I'm used to and what I enjoy. It says it's got plum in it. I don't taste any plum, but I definitely taste the fruity and chocolate sort of notes in it. I'll do my best to explain coffee the best I can. I'm not an aficionado, but I am designing a coffee game with my friend Dave Beaver, and I am trying to learn more and more through him and from him about coffee and how to recognize these things. So I definitely taste some chocolate and some fruity notes in it. And it's good. It's not my favorite out of the coffees we've tried, but it's definitely good. It's a little lighter than what I'm used to. So, okay, that's this week's coffee. Thank you guys for joining once again. I am a little early this week, solely because we have some appointments to go to this afternoon. For those of you who don't know, we are expecting a baby in the first week of May, so we are doing lots of appointments right now for baby. Let's take a look here. So that's this week's coffee. I'm going to go ahead and move on to the mechanisms that I'm interested in. Hello, Raphael. Thank you for joining. This week I'm talking about a sort of interesting set of mechanisms that, in my opinion, are done very well in both of their respective platforms, digital and tabletop. For the digital side of it, I think that's where we'll start, is Warhammer End Times Vermintide. What this game is essentially the Warhammer version of Left 4 Dead, which is a zombie game where there's lots and lots of zombies coming in trying to attack you and your party, and you've got to fight them off and go finish your objectives or move through the level in time for the game to end, and you all to survive, of course. So the Warhammer version replaces zombies with evil rat people, which I enjoy thoroughly more for some reason. It's far more fun to slay rat people called the Vermintide than it is to kill zombies, for me personally. I don't know why that is, but I found that to be interesting. Hello, Sin. Hello, Daniel. Hello, John. Thank you all for joining this afternoon. So in Warhammer, what you're doing is you're working through, and again, this is a very specific Warhammer game. End Times Vermintide is essentially like Left 4 Dead, where you're chopping through zombies to try and get to objectives and get to the end. But in Vermintide, what you're doing is you're moving through, and there's constantly just new influxes of these rat people coming at you, and you're chopping away at them. The dialogue between characters as you chop down rats is hilarious. You'll say things like "great shot," or if somebody misses, you'll say, you'd probably shoot better if you had two eyes. Just funny things where they kind of rag on each other and have a good time while they're also killing Vermintide. So the thing about it is it's fun, but it's very stressful, right? You're sitting there slashing away, and just more and more things are coming. If someone falls down, you have to stop and stop slashing to stop and pick them back up and help them, and then go back to killing the rats. And as you sit there trying to kill the rats, more rats will come, or stronger types of rats will come, and it's difficult, right, to kill the rats. Often you fail, and the rats overtake your party, and you're all dead, and you have to go back and try again. Now, this is both a fun and frustrating mechanic. Throwing more things at you for the sake of throwing more things at you can sometimes feel like, well, where was the creativity in this? But in my opinion, the way these types of games do it, especially in this in Vermintide, is you've got just a really, really smart placement of when to send the rushes in at you. It doesn't feel like it's just constant for no reason. It feels like you did something that was your objective, but it also made lots of noise. And because you made all that noise, the rats heard you and they're going to come and get you. And I really like that. So the tabletop sort of mechanic that correlates to that is, for me, Mechs vs. Minions from Riot Games. Now this is interesting. This is a video game company that decided, hey, we're going to make one of our, not even just one of the largest video game IPs in the world into a board game. And we're going to not really base it on the real video game too much, because that's a MOBA. We're going to make it a sort of cooperative, almost a dungeon crawler, but more like this sort of game that I'm talking about with with Warhammer or Left 4 Dead. There's quite a few games that live in this space where you've got lots of stuff coming in at you, and they live in the digital space generally. There's not very many games that live in this space in terms of the tabletop industry. And the reason I like Mechs vs. Minions a lot is it accomplishes this same feeling of things are coming in, and you roll a dice to tell you which side they're coming in from, or you roll a die to tell you which side they're coming in from. You're doing some different things based on what the scenario may be, because Mechs vs. Minions has multiple different scenarios, which, as does Vermintide, as does Left 4 Dead. You have various scenarios that are harder or less difficult based on how far along you are, and if you're going to sit down and play something multiple times, sometimes it can be nice to have a multiple scenario setting. I think legacy games tie into this. I think Mechs vs. Minions could almost be called a hybrid of a legacy game, right? Because it's got campaigns that you finish. Once you're done with it, you've sort of played the campaign, each one. You play through 10 of them, and then you've had a good time. You could always go back and play the game again, but for the most part, it is sort of a legacy type campaign. And I think that's interesting that to accomplish that sort of rising difficulty and the things sort of coming in and storming in on you, you've got to sort of lend yourself to the idea of saying, hey, maybe we need to do this in multiple different campaigns where we increase the difficulty based on both objective and amount of enemies that are coming in and spawning, the power level of the enemies that are coming in and spawning. And I mean, that's already 3 pretty massive variations you can do throughout a multiple scenario game, whereas in one structured game where you have no other things you can work on, you don't really have as much leeway to say, okay, this time, all of the things that come in have 2 health. On this turn, they're all going to have 4 health. That's going to be very fiddly, as opposed to saying, well, in this scenario, they all have 2 health, for the whole scenario. And then the next scenario you check, they say, okay, they all have 5 or 7 health, or whatever the case may be. It gives you a little bit more play with design there. So I really like that. But in Mechs vs. Minions, you have that feeling of, oh no, they're coming. There's more of them. There's more of them. We've got to kill this set, then this set. And you reprioritize which enemies are most important to get rid of or remove from the board. This is also very important in a game like Warhammer or Left 4 Dead, where you've got to slice through things that are the closest, but also be aware of maybe this enemy over here has a large machine gun or a rattling gun that he, yes, rattling gun, not Gatling gun, rattling gun. That's right, Vermintide. Remember it's all rats. So that was one of I love the rattling gun. Anyway, you've got to shoot across at the rattling gun, or else he's going to essentially just wipe your whole party out. So certain things are more important to prioritize in terms of damage and in terms of their threat. And in Mechs vs. Minions, it's the same way. Certain things are going to be closer to the objective you're trying to defend, so you're going to have to prioritize which one is the one to take out. Also, it's a programming game, so you can't just go, I'm going to shoot that guy. You have to plan ahead to shoot that guy. And I really like that about Mechs vs. Minions, where you're going to program everything. It may not work out perfect, but hopefully you did it well enough to clear the threat away from whatever your objective is, the bomb, whatever you want it to be. You've got to really, really make sure that you think ahead of the game and sort of think ahead of the different things the different things you'll encounter, but also what are your help. You're in a co-op, right? So there's 3 of you. You've got to sort of say, hey, I'm going to do my best to take care of removing that guy. Maybe don't say exactly how you're going to do it, but hey, I'm going to kill that guy, so maybe you should kill that guy. Now you've all worked together, but maybe something goes wrong in the middle of your programming, or one of the mech's moves or something like that. You've got to adapt and sort of play with that the next round. So you've got to consistently, you feel like you're having to catch up, which is, again, the same thing as that sort of the Vermintide does, where Left 4 Dead does, where it's like you're always feeling like you're behind the gun. You're never ahead of the gun. You're always under the gun. There's always tons and tons of things coming in at you, and you've got to stop them. Ian Moss said, rattling gun is the best pun I've heard this month. Ian, I agree with you. I think that was one of the things that turned me onto the game a whole lot is that it's very pun filled, um, with lots and lots of rat puns. And Rattling Gunner is my favorite. It's he also has a humongous rattling gun, and he just fires off at you. It's so fun. Um, that's I didn't think this game is a few years old actually. I just started playing it with some buddies who had gotten we all had it and we said, hey, what's this, and let's take a look at it, and it really really was a bunch of fun. So it reminded me of Mechs versus Minions. I would love to work in that space of sort of the considerable zombie onslaught always coming in at you, but not zombies, right? I like the idea of rats. I like the idea of different things. So something, just an onslaught of it just coming in at you over and over and over again, but in a fun way that's compelling and that's not maybe the same rehashed thing. I think if you played Dead of Winter, I think they did it just fine. I think they did it in a way that's probably better than most other games plan to accomplish for that feeling. So I would never really try to design another one with the zombies in mind. But this idea of rats, or even, I mean, I was thinking, if we've got things like something that's very close to me is diabetes, and if we had gummy bears that were just coming in, trying to take over, this entire candy kingdom, or your arteries, or whatever the case may be, you'd have the opportunity to say, oh, there's a hidden message here about how sugar is absolutely invading, our lifestyle on a regular basis or something. So you can have fun while also maybe getting a slight message across. That's something else I thought about with that. So let's move on to the media that I'm interested in. Let's do some hellos too. Hello, John, Brandon, Rob, John, Steven. Good to see y'all. I really, really appreciate you guys dropping by this afternoon, and gals. It's really, really fun to have all of my good friends drop in and say hello. And Ian Moss just won the internet by saying Gunny Bears. That's right, Gunny Bears. Gunny Bears. I love it. Rob said Pollyanna. Pollyannas. So a bunch of female parrots all coming to take over essentially our whole world. And if you don't know about Pollyanna, you definitely need to check out Dead Man's Doubloons. Best character class in Dead Man's Doubloons, the board game by Jason Maselli, and Thundergriff Games. Pollyanna is a wicked, wicked parrot. My favorite character to play. So Steven says, gulp down a big helping of life and wash it down with a glass of Triumph. I assume you mean coffee, and by that I will do so, Steven. Hello, Jeff. Good afternoon. Okay, so for media, the media I want to talk about this week is Jeremy Salinas and David Waybright's Man vs. Meeple. This is an interesting show. Man vs. Meeple is the first show I turned on for board game media and was like, whoa, there's a TV show about board games? Like, there's an actual studio set about board games? It's not just some dude with a camera over his head pointed at a board? Like, what's going on here? This is very, very interesting to me. So there are definitely benefits to that and downfalls of that. You maybe expect when you look at that set that you're going to see a very well thought out, well put together show about board games. It's more of talking about sort of games in a quick fashion, maybe some sort of thoughts on the games, but it's general overviews. My impression is that they have a lot of games to cover, and they don't get time to go in depth the way that certain reviewers do, which is fine. You've got to have sort of, here's the brief overview, this is what you might like. But geez, the set looks like, I mean, it actually looks like a television set. I mean, it looks like somebody took the time and care in to put a real backdrop. Clearly not what I'm doing, which is my messy office behind me. I mean, it's something that's taken care and time and craft to make. So, and Steven said, did you say manpression? Is that what they called it? That is their manpressions? I think that feels a little masculine. I don't like that, but if it is, okay. If it's just a joke that you're making, Steven, then also okay. I'll give you my person impression. You like that one? Person impression? My person impression is that it's an excellently well shot and put together show. The content is not what I'm generally looking for. I want like in-depth sort of general. I want your opinion on the game, or if I'm looking at a specific game, I kind of want your opinion pretty quickly on what you feel about it. I think this is more of in general a promotional device, but it's a very, very well done one. It's a very, very well put together show. Jeremy and David are well spoken. They have a very good flow between the two of them. They're both very knowledgeable about board games. I mean, there's nothing I can say that's really negative about the show, except that just for whatever reason, the way it's delivered doesn't speak to my personal taste. But I think that is a personal taste issue. I just kind of, if I'm doing something with board games, I want to know the specific thoughts on it and why. Maybe you did or did not like it. Recently, I've listened to some where I disagree with them, and I think that's great. Like not Man versus Meeple. I'm talking about other reviewers. Recently, I've had other reviewers that I've been like, that game is great. I don't think that you're giving it a very fair assessment, but at least that invokes that. So Stephen Bailey asks, what would your ideal show look like? So this is interesting. I've been thinking about this a lot. My ideal board game show would have a sort of 3-slot segment. And the first segment would be an opening with what's come out recently, the new hotness, if you will, since that's sort of how the industry seems to operate, is talking about the newest thing. And that would be about a 5 to 6 minute segment, right, real quick. And then we'd lead off into a larger introduction. And this would not be someone like me. It'd be someone well-spoken who knows how to stay on point, is camera ready, all those sort of things. And that person would do a 7 to 8 minute intro, depending on the game. A much heavier game might need a much larger intro. A 7 to 8 minute intro about how the game works, its major rules, the major mechanics that exist in it, and then immediately launch into a full game. But the full game has to be something along the lines of tabletop, with personalities, not necessarily say Will Wheaton, but people who are exciting and engaging, and when they're playing are going to have fun with the game. So they've all got to come in with the knowledge of the game, how to play it, to make it fun, to make it not a rules dive on a regular basis, and of course editing is a big part of that. So I really think that having something like that, where you've got a little bit of news, a little introduction to a game, and then a full playthrough of the game, because I think that's what a lot of times we're missing, is watching people sit down and play the game from end to end to say, would this be fun for me? But also, you can learn so much by watching a game be played. You can learn the rules. If you're a person who plays board games regularly and you watch a game played, you can go, okay, I understand what's happening. I understand what your limitations are there. Ask a few questions, and generally you know how to play it. Whereas if you give a slight overview and you say, and the rest of this is in the rules, and fade out music, you kind of have lost some stuff. So Ian Moss says, we need Last Game Tonight with John Oliver. I think comedy gaming stuff is great. I think it would be fantastic. Actually, I think that does exist too. Like Shut Up, Sit Down seems a little bit like it's in that comedy vein to me. They're really funny. They're really, really clever, and I'm sure I'll cover them in the near future here. There's also the other group, and you're going to kill me because I won't remember their name, but they just did a video where John Gilmore was portrayed by an actor, and 4 people were going in to play the new Dinosaur Island expansion. And it's or just the Dinosaur Island game, I believe, the base. And it's an incredibly funny video where they just have, sort of John trolling these 3 or 4 players who are sitting there via walkie-talkie, and when they say things about Jurassic Park, he says, of course, no, it's no, it's not Jurassic Park. It's just very similar. So Inside the Box, there we go. It's Inside the Box. I had never seen them before. James Hudson says Inside the Box is my favorite. Ian Moss also chimed in to tell me it was Inside the Box. Yeah, that one was absolutely hilarious. I don't laugh out loud in my office very often, but I was giggling. It's clever, it's fun. You also sort of learn how the game works. You learn that the dice don't taste good. All that sort of stuff. Really, really fantastic. It was funny. So Steven says, I'm working on a game show right now, not fully board game focused, but we'll have some on those segments. We'll have those on some segments. Okay, perfect. I look forward to it, Steven. That'll be awesome. I will be glad to help in any sort of way I can to help make that happen, other than being on camera. This is as much camera time as I generally want. I'm as comfortable as I can possibly be in my desk chair, but I think anything else, and I tend to get a little nervous. Ian, thank you, and Ian and James, thank you for reminding me the name. Inside the Box. If you guys have not seen their video content, it's hilarious. I mean, it's killer hilarious. So, Andrew, thank you for joining. Good to see you this afternoon. So let's take this one off the screen, and let's get to marketing and the things that I'm interested in marketing in a second. James Hudson says they're insanely talented. I'm curious why they don't have a bigger following. The content's very entertaining. I was unaware of them up until about 3 days ago when the Dinosaur Island video came out. I think awareness and visibility is going to be a big thing for them. As soon as folks know they're there and have watched one video, you'll be watching Inside the Box. It's great. I mean, it's the level of content that you'd have on something like Geek and Sundry. I mean, it's really funny actors, very talented, well shot, very, very well done. I will probably bring up Inside the Box again in the next few weeks here as I get caught up with some of their backlog. Hello, Brad. Daniel says hello again. Welcome back, Daniel. All right, so let's go to marketing, and this is interesting. This is mostly a pivot from what I had initially decided to talk about today because of yesterday's April Fool's spoof marketing products, which we did take part in. This is a really, really interesting thing that happened yesterday. I woke up and had thought to myself, we could do something like Stir Fry Legacy. Just tell people they light them cards on fire and then buy another copy as a joke. I was actually poking some fun at Legacy games and the idea that once you finish your amazing fun game, you're going to light it on fire. I personally don't love that. So I was actually poking fun at Legacy a little bit and the idea of this thing being, trash after you've played through it. So I don't think that message came through. Instead, I had a few people ask me if it was a real product and if they could get a copy, which brings me to my next point, which is very interesting. And so, yeah, there were multiple companies who did this. The ones that I saw for sure were Renegade. Renegade had some interesting sort of spoof ads. Bezier had a spoof ad for Legacy, and this is so as our Legacy one went up, I see that every other company had done Legacy as well, and it felt very unoriginal, and I sort of felt kind of icky for it because I should have looked at that first. But then again, we were all having fun, sort of community fun day thing. It's nothing, we were all just sort of goofing, so it is what it is. So anyway, Bezier had one for, and this was really, really funny. Legacy New York slice, where you'd actually cut the pizza and then you'd eat it. Which again, I think 2 or 3 weeks ago here I mentioned something along the lines of like put a coupon in a Bezier box for 10% off your pizza or something like that. But they came up with the joke Legacy Pizza. So I mean everyone was having a little bit of fun yesterday. Now I do. Ooh, this is interesting. Okay, I have some questions. So they were talking about the Facebook and YouTube and all that sort of stuff for Inside the Box, and I think that they're either in the midst of planning all that and sort of stuff like that. Zach Connolly, as a matter of fact, did as well. He has a game called Deathbot Derby, and he posted on his page that he was being sent a cease and desist by some company that is I believe it's. Warlock Industries, which is the one who does BattleBots, sent him a cease and desist. Of course, that was an April Fool's joke, but I think some people were very upset for him, saying like, "Oh, that's nonsense. Your game's so much different." I, of course, knew it was April Fool's. I knew it was a joke, but that was very fun, Zach, to see people getting upset. And same thing, I had some reviewers reach out to me to ask us for Stir Fry Legacy, where they could get a copy and light it on fire. And then, of course, I said, "But you see, the third instruction is buy another copy, so you'd have to purchase one." That's so. I mean, it's fun. We had a good time yesterday, but then at the end of the evening, I was sort of perusing around the internet, and I was looking looking through some different things and sort of pondering the day. And I see this post pop up from Gil Hova, who's one of the hosts of Ludology that I've talked about here. He's also the owner of Formal Ferret Games and the designer and creator of The Networks, a very amazing and popular game. If you haven't played it, you should. It's really good, and he's got some great expansions coming out for it. Usually I'm not huge on expansions, but the ones that I've played of Gil's are really, they make a difference, and they're a lot of fun. So real quick, let me go back. And Steven said, do you have a Legacy game that you enjoy? So far, the answer is no, Stephen. I understand the appeal, the draw. I don't generally enjoy playing the same game 10 times unless it's a really good game. So that's not something I think that is for me. I got quite a few sessions, 7 or 8 into Gloomhaven, before I decided to step away from the group. And from what I understand, the group sort of stopped after that. It was very long for me personally. That's all. I think that in general, a legacy game, you have to have a really good group that plans to be very, very dedicated to finishing it in a short amount of time for the experience to be super fun. This is my opinion. I'm sure that differs from a lot of others. Legacy games are far more popular than my opinion, so take it for what it is. I just have not found one I enjoyed yet. I would like to try Pandemic Legacy. I have not tried it yet. I think that might be the one that would get me to go sort of on the other side of the fence. But out of the ones I have tried, which is 3 others, I don't want to bash them or anything. I just didn't have a fun experience. It was too slow for me, and they sort of drug on a little bit. Daniel, I'll get to that one right away. Hi, Kurt. Good to see you. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining me for a cup of coffee. Yeah, Steven, I don't currently have a legacy game I enjoy. I would say Mechs vs. Minions is the closest because it's got the campaigns, but it doesn't boast or claim to be a legacy game. All right. So, Daniel says he agrees with the visibility. Facebook is the best marketing platform, even if YouTube is the best content platform. I agree with that. I think you've got to be able to tap into everything. It's tough because it feels like a lot of work. Even doing this to be able to pivot towards being able to get more Facebook content with YouTube content at the same time is more work. I mean, this is, of course, I'm having to reschedule life and things around it. We've got, the baby coming, so we've got doctor's appointments, and we're getting ready for that. That's why I have to move this one back today. But you roll with the punches, and if anybody thinks that marketing is not work, then they're not doing it right. Marketing is a lot of work. So let's see. Stephanie says Pandemic Legacy is in my basement waiting to be played. Stephanie, we may have to make that happen in the very near future. That is something I think we should definitely do. Let's talk about that very soon. So hi, Andrew. Yeah, good to see you. Zach says, I don't know why legacy games don't just play a role-playing game. And that's where I feel. I think as someone who played a considerable amount of like Dungeons and Dragons as a young kid when I was a Boy Scout and things like that, that they feel like a watered-down version of that, and that I just want a full role-playing game. And then anytime I think about joining a full role-playing game, I think I do not have the time. It's just so. How do we do that, right? How do we get that feeling into a 35 or 40-minute session where it's complete, or at least 5 times or 4 times that you play it, it's complete, as opposed to a 10 or 20 game thing or an ongoing campaign that never ends? That's something I'm interested in exploring. I'm sure it's exists and maybe I just haven't found it. But so I want to get into what Gil from Formal Ferret posted about these sort of April Fool's Day and game promotion, and he has a really nice long post on his website. I encourage you to go read it. It's only a few paragraphs. But it's essentially it's Gil saying why he avoided doing what I did yesterday, which is doing a spoof version of a product, is because it feels a little apparent and a little on the nose. And after reading that, a little bit of my heart sunk because I was like, you're right. Like there's an incredible amount of rightness to what you just said there. It was easy for me to say, Stir Fry Legacy Edition, light it on fire. I was poking fun at something, but it was simple. It wasn't, there wasn't a lot of thought involved in that particular joke promotion, if you will. So, I think Gil did something interesting, which was challenge creators and designers who do use this sort of spoof marketing for the future to make a real product, to make a real product that actually, potentially you can become part of, right? So you can become a part of this actual spoof product. So let's say I did make a fake game, but it was actually fun, like a silly, fun little fake game of like a 1,000-copy print run, and I put it up on the website for those, the day and the day after April Fools, and that was it. And we only sold it once a year on April Fools and the day after, or something like that. That is actually work, and that is actually a bright idea, and that's actually smart. And then at the end of the year, our customers have something they can go, oh yeah, I got this little thing. It was very inexpensive, but it was a fun thing that I was engaged with this company who I'm a fan of, and that's smarter. That is smarter. There is no question that Gil's right. So if you go read that post, essentially it just says that it at one point, this sort of April Fool's stuff with the tech, when the tech boom had started, was very new and neat, and it was fun. And I pretty much kind of agree. Like, we burnt it out yesterday a little bit, and I feel a little bit ashamed for being sort of one of the people who did that. Now, I didn't jump on a bandwagon. I already sort of had this idea that it was a good idea to maybe make that happen. But once I saw those, maybe I should have refrained. I don't think there's any major harm. There was no malice intended by me jumping in and doing an April Fool's spoof product. But I do think that Gil's right, that It was easy. It was cheap. It wasn't a super marketing initiative. It didn't take a lot of brain power on my part. Let's see. Kurt says, of course, Facebook's not the go-to place to connect with the other generation who consider it their parent social network. Yeah, I do think there's something going on with the generational gap there, and we have to figure out what the next thing is. But the purchasing power has definitely been in the hands of the Facebook user for most of my marketing career. The time that I've had to actually access people in that particular way, Facebook has definitely been the better purchasing metric versus things like Instagram and Twitter. I think that will shift as you see younger groups come up and get careers and things like that, but as of right now, Facebook does seem to be the main driving force for actual sales. That may just be with my company too. It could be very different from others. So Rob says April Fool's is my least favorite day to be on the internet. I mean, it's a silly day, but I can understand that, Rob. James Math says, hello, James, good to see you. He says that Gil's a smart and very nice guy, and I agree with him about April Fool's marketing. Yeah, in retrospect, James, I agree with him about the marketing too. In hindsight, I would not do this again. In the same way, certainly. I would create a real product. I would create a real product to engage with my actual fans. I think that's a smart idea. I like that idea, but I would not do this again with just a spoof fake version with a photoshopped image and things like that. I tend to agree, and in retrospect, and that's one of the good things about this industry is that smart people will come on and give you their opinions for free like that, and then you can go, just go easily a step further and work a little harder and give a product that's actually viable rather than a joke. So Ian said that's how Meow happened, so that can go bad. Also, I totally agree. You make a joke product and that can kind of ruin your reputation a little bit, or you end up just being a sort of novelty type of product, and you don't generally want that either. Rob said, I do like how ThinkGeek tries to make one of their spoof products a reality every year. I like that too, and I think that's what Gil is speaking to is a way that you can actually participate, be part of it, right? So Andrew says, Twitter, I guess, is next. Andrew, I don't know here. We're wrapping up. I'm just getting into all the questions here, guys. And gals, don't leave out my wonderful friends of the fairer gender. Let's see here. Can you just say real quick, good morning, Dave. Is that good for you there? Daniel, one more time. Good morning, Dave. Your mellow is mellowing my mellow. Radio voice. All right. Yeah, I have a face for radio, too, if you haven't noticed. Steven says, I agree. The ThinkGeek April Fool's joke gets people excited and voting for products. Yeah, I think that's a really cool thing to tap into. I think we're going to look at that next year, and maybe we do like 3 fake products. Which one do you want to get made? Like for real, right? That would be a very cool idea. Then again, I am just stealing from ThinkGeek, so let's try and be a little more genius, right? Daniel says, I'm sorry, Dave. I'm afraid I can't do that. Zach Connolly says, I'm going to play devil's advocate. I love a joke, and yes, some of the ads were weak, but sometimes I appreciate getting a good chuckle out of an ad. Did anyone see the Lego vacuum? Yeah, the Lego vacuum was really clever. Again, I like them, but I feel like the way I participated was cheap, easy, and didn't require a lot of thought. And if in the future I can maybe put more thought into that kind of thing, it would be better. Rob says, record the hurdy-gurdy edition. Yeah, I thought of doing a spoof of, record the super deluxe edition that came with a Fender Super Deluxe amplifier and a new guitar, and it was, MSRP of $49.99.99. Here's my issue with doing something like that is I was worried that somebody would actually want to, order that or something like that, and that's, we don't have those sort of connections. I was also worried that maybe Fender or the company that we put the guitar up for something would get upset. Record the polka edition. Record re-accord. It's a game about playing the accordion. Reaccord. Yeah. Reaccordion. Yeah, okay. A lot of stuff went through my mind. Of course, I did the easiest one. Yeah, that's pretty much all I've got this week. Thank you guys for being very, very engaged with the conversation. I think this is one of the weirdest marketing things I've talked about because it's not really somebody's marketing. It was actually ours, and it's how I kind of feel a little ashamed about how I did it. So thank you for bearing with me through that. But Yeah, it's been an interesting sort of 24 hours in retrospect to think about. That wasn't the way I would have liked to do it. I probably should have gone a little bit further and a little bit better with that marketing initiative. And I totally agree with Gil in this particular instance, that there's a better way to do it. I could have done it better. I could have done it cleaner, and I think you all would have been um, maybe a little bit more impressed than just sort of the same sort of thing. Record the mixtape making game. Now that game is out a couple of times from what I understand. There's some really fun mixtape games. I don't remember the names, and I've got to wrap it up because I've got to get going. But thank you guys for joining me for this cup of coffee this afternoon. This has been a very, very good episode. I really appreciate it. And we'll be back again next week with another cup of coffee and some more things to talk about. So again, thank you for being here, and I really appreciate it. And we'll see you guys next week.